So yeah, I figured if I'd ask you about
Yeah.
when it was, I would say 2013, and then it is when The Hobbit came out. Is what you told me is when we first talked about it, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, so The Hobbit had come out in the end of the summertime of 2013. Um, and so I specifically remember being at the intersection of 12 and 50, and you telling me that you had an idea for a book. So there was this empty lot right across from the intersection. I pulled into this grassy lot, and we probably sat there for 2 hours or so, um, discussing the plot, the pilot for this idea that has been birthed for
I think 2012 is when I started in August of 2012.
right, not 13. It
For
was
me, when I found
2012.
myself.
Right, it was 2012 when we had that conversation, not 2013. Um, yeah, August of 2012. So that's been 11 years now.
Mhm.
It's now 2023. Um, a lot has gone into this.
Do you remember what I brought? Like, what was I talking about? Do you remember anything about that conversation?
You had some colored notebooks,
Mm-hmm.
um, and I want to. You had like three.
Did I?
I think you did. I think you had two or three. And you had talked about how you had like two ideas at the time. You didn't know where to go in direction wise, and you wanted to include um, other writers. You said that you wanted to have this um, J.R. Tolkien um, meets what's his name, the author of Narnia,
C.S. Lewis.
C.S. Lewis, right? Um, how C.S. Lewis and Tolkien got together and helped. They wrote some of the greatest literature that we have in modern times, and that's what you were looking for. You were looking for your C.S. Lewis, and I don't know if I'm the equivalent to a C.S. Lewis, but I'm totally on board to help write an adventure for somebody to go on. Um, and that's one of the aspects that I feel life is about. It's about storytelling. Everybody has a story to tell, and I definitely want to be a part of that. I want to tell my story, and just like so many other people, uh, there's a masquerade about it, right? There has to be something clever, something hidden, something that there's deeper meaning to. Because if you give it at face value, sometimes it's just kind of flat. So there needs to be some imagination put behind it. And I think that's what we need in modern times right now. Not not an illusion, not an escape from reality, but we need some place fresh to go, right? I feel like the meadows um, are not lush anymore, right? The grass is greener on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, things are kind of stale now, as far as storytelling wise, and I I've been told recently um, that I have an interesting and fascinating life story. I don't think so. I think my life is just kind of vanilla, but to other people, it's something worth listening to. So um, I'm in that moment. I went back to that day that you and I sat down in your old apartment, and we traded hot seats. We were writing for 10, 15 minutes, and we would rotate, and you'd write for 10, 15 minutes, and we wrote something quite marvelous, in my opinion.
I think it's pretty good.
I think it's really good. So, immediately I went back to into that moment, because if somebody's going to tell me, "Hey, give me a quick run over of your life story," well, nobody's ever asked me that. So, shoot, what's a good quick synapse? How do I deliver this? And because like a first impression, right? You only get to tell your life story one time, right? How do I do this? So I had to do it in a real quick 5-minute fashion. I had to think before she came back from one of her tables. And so I was like, okay, well, here it is. Here's real cold cut, dry kind of deal. And well, if that quick synopsis is enough to bait and hook somebody, then I think we can write something really good.
Yeah, for sure.
And a lot better than 5 minutes. So, I've explained my tabletop idea to people. People really like it. They think it's really cool. They think it's new. They think it's something that hasn't been done before. Well, shit. All I need is investors now.
Sure.
I just need somebody to be like, you know what? Milton Bradley. Let's go.
Yeah.
You know? Is it egotistical? I don't think so, because it's not like I'm arrogant. It's not like I'm
that's what I
talking about something that hasn't happened yet.
That's the question I wanted to get to.
Mm-hmm.
At that time and now. So at that time, what was it that made you say, yeah, I kind of want to do
Because you miss every shot you don't take.
Is that what
And
it was?
Yes, because now, okay, is he really here? Could we really ask? No, we can just think around the idea of it. But what made Bilbo go?
Mm-hmm.
When Gandalf presented him the opportunity of a lifetime, like anybody can sit around and think about their own hand of fate reaching out to them, but it only comes to you once.
Yeah.
And okay, now this is a very easy what if road to go down. The road of regret. What if, what if, what if, what if, what if? And you can what if all day until you're blue in the face.
Yeah.
I don't want to do that. I don't like what ifs. I like reality. Reality, there's fruit that bears from reality. Okay, now, caveat. What if we are successful? Well, that means I'd have to take a step in that direction first. All right, fine. Sounds like a challenge. I like challenges. Has it been a challenge? Yeah, it's been a little bit of a challenge in the last 11 years. I've been homeless. I've been with you, sharing a house with a crazy drunk that almost blew up the house because he drunkenly bumped into the gas stove and turned the stove top on. There has been adventures of our own,
just through it,
that can through this book that can be easily turned into literature within these pages of this book that we're writing. And how many people have done that? They've taken real tales from their own life and then made a figment aspect about it, something fantasy about it.
Expand upon things.
Because what are those marshes in Lord of the Rings? That's no man's land. Those
they
are
equate it to that. Yeah.
Those are the bodies in the craters in the mud that have just been there for the last months, weeks, days, years. And to think about Frodo falling, like you hear in the podcast from Dan Carlin, he talked about in Blueprints of Armageddon how there would be young men that would fall off the duck boards.
Oh yeah.
And they would fall into the mud, and they tried to help them, and then the people that tried to help them would sometimes fall in too. And then there's no help. But that scene when Frodo falls in and Gollum comes and pulls him out, it makes you think about the reality that this story is trying to tell.
Mm-hmm.
And when you pull back the veil of fantasy and you're in the realm of reality, right? So this book that we are writing has that. it has the different veils. Some are fantasy, some are reality. And it is up to the reader and the reader's imagination to decipher which is what. And I find that not only challenging, because I think that there is a slight challenge into that. Implementing the fantasy and reality. How do you weave that together to where it's not bland? It's not just, well, this is kind of How do you make it so that the reader is enticed by this?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not an author, so I don't know. I've never done this before. So the unknown is sort of the challenge. But I'm sure there's people out there that could say, "Well, anybody can write." Maybe. I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think so. I don't think everybody has it in them, right? We all have different skill sets
true.
and things.
Well, that's something that I brought up. I said, I'm going to release one, and then this is going to be kind of going after it. I said, well, with you, I noticed in the beginning, the Anaku was like your first thing. You're like, what about a clan of people? And then I don't know. I don't even remember exactly how it all happened. I just have the notes of you just telling me about these people, and I'd ask you questions, and you'd say, and then, I don't know, they live in the forest, and okay, and then there's like a weird ritual that they have to go through, and it's not, like, it shaped everything to come, but at some point, there were two main jumps you had. I don't remember how long the period was. I just remember all of a sudden, and now I have Vathia, and now Tantorum exists. And I was like, what's a Tantorum, Vathia? What's all this stuff? And you created a whole nation. And I don't even know where that came from. I don't know how that happened.
Okay.
The second shift, I'll let you get to it. The second shift was, you just went from that to being purely physical. The game boards, the pieces, like you just kind of said, visuals. Like you took another different jump. Do you know what I'm saying? Because instead of like, you're like, I'm going to write all this, you're like, no, I want to. And I said that you wanted to, like, you just got lost in it in a good way. Like you decided to say, I have to see this place. Like it almost drove you mad.
Absolutely.
Where you just like, I got to see it. I can't no longer, like I'm getting to that point where it's like, I got to.
I can no longer dwell in a realm of what if, right? What if this really looked like... I don't want to dwell into that anymore. I want to produce something. And something that I think is inherently within us, all of us as humans. We all have a inherent need to create something. We are just creatures of creation.
Yeah, of course.
So, knowing two things. One, Star Wars was made based off of a lot of models and a lot of
like the artwork,
right?
Ralph McCorm and all that.
And then Lord of the Rings, all of the look at the video footage for Helm's Deep. I mean, that is a scaled model, and
a lot of it's scaled models.
That's what I love, dude. And who would have ever thought when I was born in 1989 that when I was adopted, my dad, that's what his thing was, models, scaled models. That's just kind of the thing that was handed down to me.
Yeah.
Some dads are into cars and rebuilding classics, and that's what they get their sons into. Well, my dad got me into scaled models. And lo and behold, as I'm growing up, not really knowing what these things are, models and figures, and these are for games. You implement them in such a fashion. This is a tabletop game, and you use strategy and tactics. Okay, well, I've always wanted to be in the military, and this is just secondhand, right? This isn't the real thing. This is wargaming. I like that. This is next level, right? So, knowing that there are movies based off of special effects and visual effects off of models, well, somebody had to make that. Somebody had to have the skill set to do that. Well, I have that skill set. I can do that. I can help visualize this world. I can make this world a reality, not just ink on paper, but really bring you to a place. I can show you where these peaks are. I can show you where these valleys are. I can make these rivers. I can make these towns. It's not out of the realm of impossible.
Yeah.
It is very possible, and I have the ability to make it possible.
Yeah.
And so, sitting on not doing it, I mean, what is to gain from not doing that? Nothing. You're gaining nothing. I don't like being a do nothing.
Yeah.
And again, going back to what I said originally, I've explained and shown people the pictures that I've taken of these boards and these figures that I've done, and they all say there's nothing out there like it.
Yeah.
And the fact that I'm doing something that you and I set out 11 years ago to do,
Yeah.
and now there's actual fruit
That's
being
true.
produced from this,
Yeah.
and there's a positive feedback. Not that, we were set out to do something and people are like going, man, that's shitty. I know, right? Man, that's really terrible. No, we all want to create something that people like and appreciate.
Yeah.
And yeah, I've always been the type of person that's drawn to hyperrealism for whatever reason. Cartoony things, yeah, it's kind of cool, but
Yeah, me too.
if I were to produce something, I want it to be hyper-realistic, because that's how we as humans relate. We relate to something we can assimilate to. That what is that? Empathy, sympathy,
mhm.
something like that. One of those apathy things.
Empathy. Yeah.
And so when there's something that we can connect with, there's that connection, and I feel like with enough connections, we could form a cult following, and cult followings are huge.
I know. I was thinking about that too. Honestly, I was also thinking about. I had a random thought, and I was like, "What if?" Not what if. I'm gonna tell Kelly I'm here so she knows. I was like, there was a point I don't remember, but I made a on the video. I said, for me, there was a point where I was like, this is not just a fun place for me and Kevin to go. This is a job now. This is a world. I got to start becoming a writer. I didn't plan to be a writer, but I have to now, because there was a point where I was like, we're just going here and making fun things up. There's like land, culture, people, wars, armies, water. Like, there's a bunch of shit. We're just making it. I'm just thinking there was a point where I was like, I'm going to have to start writing. I guess I got to be a writer now, even though I don't like writing. I didn't plan to be a writer. It was never a goal of mine, as a child or anything. But I realized, like, it's a place now that has to be written about. Was there a point for you where, it became like, this isn't just like a little fun hobby that we go and like talk and do, like role playing kind of D&D style? Like, was there a point for you where you just like, this is bigger than I thought it could ever be, or this became something more than I imagined? I have to do this now. Like, was there a point where it's like, holy shit?
The determining factor for me was when I was homeless, and I want to say it was October of 2013. You and I were on the phone. I was in North Carolina. I don't know if you remember, I was talking about the Inakume and how the Inaku would have certain ceremonies. And do you remember when I thought I came up with the Hiawatha?
Kinda.
So there's been things that I thought that I originally constructed, but they're real. Like the name Vathia, it's a Greek name. It means deep. I didn't know this. I had to type it in one day. I was like, I wonder if that's the real name.
I've done
and
that.
it's Greek.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. I have no idea. So, like, how does that happen? Like, I'm not a very uh, linguistically
Me
educated
neither.
individual.
Right? Yeah.
So when I come across a word that I think I came up with, and to find out that there's nothing new under the sun, and it's in a different language, that's trippy to me. Because how does that happen? How do you form a word that translates into another language? I mean,
Yeah.
I get it. Yeah, but the chances of you constructing letters to make this word, I don't know.
I know.
You know,
I
because
got a few myself. I was like, I made up the word aeon. I thought, and I found out that's actually a real fucking thing.
it's crazy.
And it's really similar to what my aeon. I'm like, I'm done. I don't. This
It's
is
just really
you're
interesting.
pulling
how-
it from somewhere. But it
Yeah.
was something along that line for you that just made it
feels
seem
like a gift, though.
I have to do this now.
Yeah, it feels like when 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 these things happen, when these moments occur, it's almost like we are being gifted these things. It sounds crazy to say, but an egotistical, like, oh, you think you're so special to be gifted the thought of coming up with a Greek word that you could have just typed it in and found it. Okay, shut up. I'm not here. Look, I grew up in the 90s before the internet was a thing, so get off my back. I'm just trying to live my life the way I know how. Sometimes it's just, I guess, in the wine community, a little dry.
Yeah.
You know? I don't really embellish in the sweetness of the internet all the time when it comes to this. This is just more of my bare bones. I'm just trying to do what I know is natural, and sometimes trying to think up words if we're writing a book and you're trying to do something new and creative, you know, sometimes there's this weird magical thing like, okay, so it's not so original, but the context behind the thought is.
Like the collective unconscious, essentially.
Yes, right.
Like there's like a.
And how do you tap into that collective unconscious?
I think that it's a.
There's this weird.
It's a doorway that opens
Yeah.
only when God allows it to open.
I was gonna say there is a special like divineness, like a very like, and do I feel it all the time? No, but like when you're reflecting back on these little moments, it does feel like you've kind of cracked the door, and it's spilled out a little bit, and I don't know how else other to explain it other than that, other than it does feel like there is slight influences of divinity in this.
Me too. I mean, that's all I've ever felt.
Because I can't explain things like, how did you come up with the name Vathia, and not know Greek?
Like all the little things, even or like the little metaphors we accidentally make. We
Yes.
make metaphors on purpose, but there are times where we've accidentally made some metaphors and we didn't set out to. You know what I mean? Like
As Bob Ross would say, happy accident.
a lot of the things that you made, I made them, Jacob have made, I've noticed have just like coincide really well. Or they like, I have my writing style for myself now is I go through those journals because I have this weird tendency my whole life to leave things like just, you know, like, and then there was a great war, but we won't go into it anymore. And somehow I'm like, ooh, that 5-year-old thought connects to this 10-year-old thought, and those together come up with this new thought that I have for what the Titans are. Like, all my shit's like that. So my journals are like this weird time warp that I get to go through anytime I need ideas, and I find new ideas. Like, it's really crazy, like how it works for me. Like, I leave myself mental clues, like Memento, that movie. Like, that's how my journals work.
I remember so after we had established that we were going to write this book.
When was that?
In
Where we live with
August
Kevin?
2012.
2012, okay.
And then in the following weeks and months after that, when we were playing the different gigs in our band that we had started, you had been writing in your journals, the very first ones, your dreams. You would wake yourself up out of your dream, and you would write in these journals. And to me, that was the first crumb of the legitimacy behind this, the effort that was going to go into this, the fact that sleep wasn't necessary, that it was just a part of this, an ingredient to the storytelling that is about to take place. Um, for me, uh, there are elements that I think sleep has given us a bit of a doorway, um, metaphorically, because of the different realms that you can traverse, right? Supposedly, when you dream, uh, you're able to travel. Um,
Yeah.
is that real? I don't know. It is very interesting
Feels
because
like
I've
it.
had dreams where I'm underwater,
Yeah.
and how do you breathe underwater? That is very sketchy. But I've looked into the meaning of that, and um,
Hmm.
so when you're underwater and there's nothing around you, it's because you feel like you're alone, that there's nothing around you.
Yeah.
Um, and I had that dream right around the time that I was homeless, so it made a lot of sense.
Hmm.
It made a lot of sense. And the impending doom of sharks in the not too distant, because it was like I was on the shelf of a coral reef, and it was kind of bare. So I knew that there was predators around. That impending doom of there's aggressive sharks in the waters. Um, that's life, right? Your obstacles,
Yeah.
the things that um, are currently burdensome to you, right? So like the fact that there was nothing around me, the loneliness. I was homeless, right? I didn't have anywhere to go. Um, and then the sharks, right? Hunger, shelter, right? Those are real things that can eat you alive, I guess, in a sense. So, um, I know we're not done with this book, so it's exciting um, to tell this tale, and to hear and see where these characters go, um, is in and of itself another adventure.
It is. It feels like it.
Because before we wrote Gear Lore, that was heavy. I had
Mm.
to come with some terms on that
Yeah.
because there was some past emotions that I hadn't dealt with that I had to deal with writing.
That section.
Yeah, um, and I think within all of this, there is going to be some healing within all of us that we're able to do, and I
Yeah.
think that's why people do write the books the way they do, because there is healing that is taking place. How it happens, I don't know. It's just uh, a part of this life. It's just the way it happens. I don't think we're supposed to know all the nitty gritty details in this life, because I think that would drive us mad. Because once you know something, you can't unknow it. And I feel like if you were to know some of these things that are unknowable, it would be a paradox, and it would just contradict so much of the reality around us that I think we would have a hard time coming to terms with some of these paradoxes, because it might contradict the some of the values and morals that we have. How I don't know. That's a big what if, right? That's going down that road of not ever setting out on an adventure. Well, how would it ever have an like? There's you don't ever grow either. That's like the parable about the seeds. If you don't ever submerge yourself, You know, if a seed never gets put into the soil, if it's just on top, it'll never sprout. And I feel like that's a lot of society right now, as they're just sitting on top of the dirt, trying to figure out how do you get under. Just me theorizing
Mm-hmm.
in a very metaphorical way.
Yeah.
That I think the first part of growing up is learning how to spread your roots. And I think you have to do that in a responsible fashion financially, right? You have to have yourself covered financially before you could ever spread your roots. So that means you literally have to cover yourself. You have to give yourself shelter. You have to feed yourself. Those are the two major components in life. That is how I think you are on the path of success. Now, it really is up to the individual to build their golden road. There's nobody that's going to build a golden brick road for you. The land of Oz doesn't really exist unless you build it, and that's where I came to terms with in myself. There's nobody else that's going to construct this world unless I do it. And there's a left hand and a right hand. Well, I've always been on the left hand side. I'm lefty. I paint with my left hand. I just left dominant, but I throw right handed, so that's weird. But I've always felt like I'm the left hand to somebody. So, in this,
That's the first side I trust.
yeah, right.
When I come down to a two fork in the road, I'm like left.
So
That's why I always trust in you. I'm like, he's
buddy.
got it.
Yeah, I told Summer about that. When I first got that van and came to the apartment, and I had to back it up. I made the wrong decision of going all the way into the back of the parking lot.
Yeah.
It'd be like here, be a bad idea. And I told Summer, I was like, man, I was really hoping they'd come by and help me. But then I did it eventually. Did like an 80-point turn, and I finally got out of there, and I got my van parked, and I got out of there, and Andre told me, yeah, I knew he'd do it. I knew he had it. So I appreciate the confidence. I don't always have it in me in the moment, but knowing that other people do helps me.
Yeah. That's how I feel about the writing too. I'm like, he's got this. I know he doesn't feel like it, but he's got it. Like,
Yeah.
I know that's a fact.
So starting the actual writing for me on my end was when we were in Kevin's.
And I remember that.
Right.
I don't remember what year that was, but I do
That
remember.
was 2016.
So I think I met Jacob in 2016 or 15,
Okay.
apparently. That's what he says. But I remember that. I had the computer set up on that stupid fucking stool. It was like so uncomfortable. It's like a really tall, skinny stool.
Bar stool, yeah.
And I remember you just being so uncomfortable. But I was like, that's good. Like, uncomfortableness will really help the writing. So I just remember you just...
That was the year after I'd gotten ran over.
Yeah,
So I was still
horrible.
acclimating. My body was still like, we're fucked up.
He kept like, oh, being so much pain. I'm like, use the pain. Use it. But I do remember that. I remember you beginning the Up in the Mountains,
My first chapter, yeah, Up in the Mountains.
looking out. And I think because you're like, I don't know what to write. And I was like, I'll write a paragraph. And I wrote the sounds of the mountains. The echo from the guy of all the mountains could be heard reverberating like that. I wrote that part, and I was like, there you go. Like,
Yeah.
there's where you are. Now what?
Once you made that, we'll go to the analogy of painting again. Once you gave me that first little brushstroke of paint and color, I could see. I knew exactly what I was looking at. So how you talked about you want to see the Valley of Gale.
Mm-hmm.
I have this big canvas in my closet. I'm going to paint you what I see when I first read that, I'm gonna paint you the Gayavala mountain range and a portion of the Leopa Valley, because that's where they were at. That's where that first takes place, up there in the Leopa Valley by the Gayavala mountain range. And I want to go there, but it's one of those things to where you can't. But dude,
we can
we kind of can. We can kind of use our imagination
and get that paint. I want to paint a couple places like that too.
Yeah,
I want to go there. But that was the moment for the writing with you. That was your, okay, like I have a character involved, and that was going to be my question. Is like, Vathia, is he you, or is he? I wouldn't go so far as to say your child, but is he a part of you, like that you've made, or does he feel like he's you? When you think about Vathia,
Vathia's myself. Like, how do you tell your tale without being too on the nose about it, right? So, yeah, we have to be a little creative about it. We have to use our imagination, and so I've never really thought, again, like you say, myself as a writer. So how do I do this? Well, I got to create a character, and then if I'm going to write my experiences, well, this character has to have experiences, and so I've got to write this in such a fashion so it's my experience, but it's also this character's experience. I don't know how I'm going to do this. This is an interesting dilemma. Now I'm up here in these mountains, and I've been up in some mountains, and now I gotta make this character walk in my shoes without it sounding like it's my pair of shoes. Like, oh, it's like Kevin's shoes.
Those are his fucking boots.
So that to me was kind of the dilemma that I was in. Is I got put up on this mountaintop, and now I'm told, all right, it's up to you to get off it now. Oh. Well, I've never been in this position before. This is interesting. This is going to be an intriguing adventure now, isn't it?
Yeah.
All right. Now we're up here. We're up here in the mountains. Now we got to get off these mountains. All right. Now we got a plan. We got to come up with a plan now.
Yeah.
And that's where I was left. I felt I didn't necessarily feel like Vathia was me. I felt like I was Vathia in that moment. Right? Going back to the old question, what imitates what? Does art imitate life, or does life imitate art? Well, I don't know. I know Vathia isn't me, but one could say, is Kevin Vathia?
Yeah.
You know, there is that. Is that hyperbole? Going back to the paradox, like, is there somebody in another life that is us? So to ask. Is there somebody out there writing a book, and Kevin was up there in the mountains?
Yeah. Huh. Spell the last name right. I mean, that's cool.
Dude,
I guess.
It's just one of those interesting thoughts to have, and so yeah. When we do go to these places, where we do tap into these realms, very momentarily, right? Where we there is a crack in the realms of reality and fantasy, and there's that bit of spillover of divinity, right? And like you talk about it, to where you see out of the corner of your eye these little shimmers, right?
The veil.
The magic, right? To me, or to Vathia, depending on who you're talking to. Now I sound crazy. Who, I guess it depends on who you're talking to about what they think they saw and what they believe.